Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 58 today for the Portuguese Grand Prix for the very first time on this game in My Team Career Mode. If you guys did miss the previous episode, uploaded, a good week ago now, so massive apologies for the delay on this next My Team episode. It's been a very busy start this week over the weekend. Obviously the World Cup began as well, so just been very busy and not had a very clean day to actually record an episode of this. It does take like a whole day to get an episode of this done, and I've just not had a clean run, a clean day to actually get an episode out. I have wanted to, because I've been really enjoying this current new season that we've had. You know, plenty of change, so many, fresh faces and brands and things to get excited about. And the V8s are back in this season, but just haven't had the time this week. But hopefully there will be a second episode later out on the weekend as well, and we'll get the ball rolling a bit more with consistent My Team Career Mode episodes. But last time we had a very fiery Bahrain Grand Prix, an episode in which we had a bit of a up and down roller coaster race in qualifying, with the crash with our teammate in the race as well, and having to come back through after a safety car and making what was about 11 overtakes in about 4 laps to secure a pretty solid P4 in the end. So definitely, if you haven't seen that episode, worth checking out before you get into this one. But a raft of upgrades failed us in that episode, and we're looking to try and repurchase a couple of those. We've also got one development failing us going into this episode of drag reduction, and also on the fuel side of things. So it's a pattern. Even though we've got a few more R&D points in our team, and we've been able to purchase quite a fair few upgrades at the start of this season compared to season 3, the pattern has been about half of them, if not more than half of them, have been failing us. So we've tripped over a little bit there, but there are some guaranteed upgrades this episode because of all the failures we had last episode. It's guaranteed now when you repurchase an upgrade that they will come in the next time they're due. So I think we should have about 3 or 4 upgrades coming in for this episode, but there might be a couple of few more failures to come potentially. Well, the upgrades we have so far then are improving our car in the aerodynamics department. Engine-wise, we're still in the top 2 of engines on the grid, and the drag side of things, our car has been very draggy, and we've seen that plenty of times when we've stopped deploying ERS in the first 3 races. That is also improving, and we're about now, I would say, halfway up the grid in terms of aerodynamic side of things, and that adds in with obviously our chassis always been quite strong. It adds in to now us being the 3rd best team on paper, just behind by a marginal amount to McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, still retaining their advantage over the winter, over the remaining rest of the grid. But it's quite tightly packed, of course, with McLaren, ourselves, Mercedes, the other Audi Sport Works team, and then quite close actually down below with Haas making some good strides into this Portuguese Grand Prix, and they're actually now very close to Ferrari. So that might be a very interesting battle to look at. Haas, after a very disappointing and underwhelming season 3 and beginning of this season, they might well look a lot better into this episode, with a lot of other teams kind of failing to really get going with upgrades, and maybe they spent so much focus on trying to adapt parts into this season that they've not been left with too many R&D points to actually go out and purchase upgrades. But I'm sure at some point all our rivals around us will start upgrading, with ourselves having reduced R&D and the AI teams all having boosted R&D. So it's only a matter of time. So to be honest, we should take it whilst we can and make the most of these gains this episode and try and score some good points. But it's not going to be easy. As I said, new circuit to this game and My Team series. For the first time, we come back to Portimao on F1 22. Obviously had some Grand Prix on F1 2021 here, and it was always a very difficult circuit, a literal roller coaster, undulating up and down in terms of the track layout, and with the tyre also being quite difficult. It always made for a very challenging race versus the AI, and who knows how these 2022 cars are going to take to this circuit, because we didn't see it in real life, so it's going to be a real mystery, and so we're going to have to see how it goes. And what's not going to help is that, as you can clearly see, there is rain about for the first part of qualifying. I think it's going to be drying up as we go on through this Saturday, and no rain rain forecast for this Sunday, so this will be the only wet session we have in the race weekend. But being the first session, there's all the jeopardy of not making it through even into Q2. So this is now our 4th flying lap in the session. We did 3 runs on the same set of tyres earlier. Brand spanking new set at the end of the session with the track starting to dry meant there was a massive track evolution, so good that we got out there and we got up into P10. But what did I say? Jeopardy of being knocked out. Our teammate Carlos Sainz out in Q1 along with Piastri in the Ferrari, Perez in the Renault and Russell in the Mercedes. So 4 big names out in the first part of quali, and Andretti Honda looking very, very decent in these wet conditions, and also Haas, look at them there, P13 and 14, you know, those upgrades clearly working straight away, and maybe the car suiting the circuit better. But one thing remains true is Lando Norris, the man who's leading the championship so far this season going into this one, leads the way in Q1, but now it's a bit of a different picture and outlook. It is a lot sunnier around Portimao, and now we get to see what the pace is like in the bone dry conditions on the red wall soft tyres. First early lap was pretty damn decent, up into P1, down to P4 now as we enter the last couple of seconds of this session. Unfortunately, no improvements made in sectors 1 and barely just about on the teetering edge of a green second sector. In the end, it'll be red actually by the time we climb up the hill for this last short sector 3. Gasly and Norris up there in P2 and 3. The McLaren Mercedes looking rather strong. Schumacher though strong as well as we lose the back end, and it's a disappointing end to the lap there. It was a frustrating one, confusing in fact, of how we weren't gaining time on the second flyer with the track rubbering up and getting faster and faster. But in the end it won't matter because we're on the last cars out on circuit, so despite this spin we are going to remain in the top 10. Fernando Alonso pops up there and we do make it through into the top 10 shootout along with the 2 Red Bulls of Albon, Tsunoda, 2 McLaren Mercedes, Leclerc's Mercedes, both Andretti Hondas. That is a shock. In their 4th race only, Andretti Honda actually look like they're hitting a bit of a stride, getting comfortable. Maybe for now their engineers are now looking... Maybe now their engineers are getting comfortable with setting up the car to the way Fernando and Liam Lawson like it. To be fair, though, Liam Lawson does have a grid penalty, so that's going to be unfortunate for him. And then the last man that squeezes in are Schumacher and Ferrari and Verstappen for Renault. Both Audi Sport Works cars get knocked out. That is a bit of a shock, but they did lack a bit of pace at Brazil, and Portimao is also another undulating circuit like Sao Paulo, so potentially maybe just Audi, the works team, not dialing in the car, and so we are the single Audi-powered car in the top 10 now. A bit worrying how we just didn't have much pace on that second flying lap in Q2 though, so let's see how this one goes for us. We do have 2 fresh sets of soft tyres to use in this session due to the rain in Q1, so let's try and make the most of it. On the first flying lap, early markers being set by Fernando Alonso in the Andretti Honda there in P5 as others are also going round on their first flyers. Verstappen pops in to go purple in the Renault, surprising there. Lawson ahead of Alonso. We're up into P3 in between the 2 McLaren Mercedes, but there is a second run to come. Leclerc P5, Albon up to P1, provisional pole as the Red Bulls arrive. Tsunoda and Albon are getting themselves up into the top 6 as the second runs fall. We're down to P7, Alonso and Schumacher behind us, and again on the second flyer, we fail to improve. Very, very baffling qualifying here around Portimao. I don't know what was going on, because really, in theory, every time your secondary laps should be kind of better. You dial in a bit more to the circuit, but for whatever reason, every session, it seemed like the end of it, apart from Q1, we weren't going any quicker, and it's a front row lockout for McLaren Mercedes. I thought it may have been Albon or Tsunoda on the front row, and maybe even pole position, as they look pretty damn quick, but McLaren come out the boxes at the end when it matters to seal out the front row. Tsunoda, though, does very well to lead the Red Bull team in P3 ahead of Albon P6. Of course, Tsunoda coming off the back of a sensational win at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Verstappen flying high for Renault in P4, Leclerc P5, Alonso down in P8, and Lawson P10 with Schumacher in between. To be fair to Schumacher, doing amazing to get that pretty much of a dog of a Ferrari up in the top 10 anyway, and a bit more of a representative pace maybe from Andretti Honda as Alonso is close, but wasn't able to get any higher than that P8. For us, lucky number P7 on the grid. Let's hope it turns out to be lucky on Sunday. Let's go to the first race of Portimao ever on F1 22, my team.
Welcome along then to Portimao, one of the busiest towns in the Algarve and a breathtaking destination that brings tourists from all around the world to the shores of southern Portugal. Today it's the backdrop for the latest round of the Formula One World Championship, and with a circuit this wide, we could be in for a lot of exciting wheel-to-wheel action today. 2.9 miles of track at Portimao feature 15 turns, 9 to the right and 6 to the left. A lot going on at this track, a lot of elevation changes that'll affect the driver's braking and acceleration. Keep an eye out for the DRS zone on the final straight. That'll be the setup for a lot of today's overtaking opportunities. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. A fantastic effort from Pierre Gasly yesterday puts him on pole position, edging out Lando Norris, who'll start from P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Tsunoda, Verstappen, Charles Leclerc and Albon. The owner-driver, Fernando Alonso, Mick Schumacher and Felipe Drugovich, Vettel, Bottas, Esteban Ocon and Liam Lawson. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Stroll, Théo Pourchaire, George Russell and Sergio Perez, Oscar Piastri, Sainz, Magnussen and Robert Schwartzman. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. Natalie Pinkham joins me once again in the commentary box. It's fantastic to have you with us today. I'm curious though, how do you think the drivers stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It'll keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Set to be quite a challenging race either way for everyone, really, as we return to this circuit and with very different looking cars to what we had on last year's game. Will the tyre wear be the same? What's that going to play out like? It looks like a lot of us are going for the soft compound tyre. A couple of people going for the mediums. This time, I've not been one of them that has chosen the medium compound because the apparent strategy is soft to medium, pretty bog standard one stop, apparently on the softest compounds available. So with the tyre upgrades, obviously being season 4, maxed out chassis for all these teams, including our own, apart from the brake upgrades, maybe the tyre levels actually won't be too bad with soft and medium being the option for this race today. It's going to be a tough race for the Audi teams and drivers, myself being the highest in P7, Sainz all the way down in the bottom 5, and the 2 Audi works cars outside the top 10. So what can we do? Can we take the fight to the likes of Red Bull, McLaren and Mercedes and Renault ahead of us as we go to 5 red lights for round number 4, the return to Portugal, Portimao. 5 red lights are out and we're underway. It's a pretty decent start compared to the ones we've had so far this season into turn 1. Can we manage to snag an overtake on Albon? We do. A very awkward turn 1. It kind of closes up and gets all the cars together. Leclerc with a double dive bomb. He's got Tsunoda and he's got Verstappen. Leclerc in the silver arrow up into P3 for Mercedes as we just narrowly able to catch the car as the rear end snaps away from us with the heavy fuel. These up and down sections at this circuit are so deadly when the car is so heavy at the rear with a full tank of fuel. But we're up into P6. Alonso has managed to overtake Albon, and so the Andretti is ahead of one of the big names this season. Vettel and Bottas making progress. They're up into P11 and 12 now behind Mick Schumacher. Verstappen overtaken by this man Leclerc, 3-4 respectively, but it's still a 1-2 for McLaren Mercedes. Gasly in P1, Lando Norris the championship leader in P2. It looks like things are clicking for the McLaren team finally. Last season Gasly in a title fight but just fell away very much so at Abu Dhabi. Could this season finally get one of them them in the mixer. Long way to go in this race, and I'm hoping on one of the cars I can start chasing after them as we're going to try and get past Yuki Tsunoda, one of the cars on medium tyres. So he's going to be slower in this first part of the race, very much like myself and, likes of Vettel have been, this season so far when we've chosen the medium compound. So it's very crucial to get past Yuki as quick as possible. And as this first stint goes on, maybe the pattern might be the medium tyre runners falling down the order as Albon tries to get past Alonso with the soft compound and his Red Bull car. He does. He's back up into P7, and Sebastian Vettel powers past Mick Schumacher to get up into P10. So already we're seeing those medium tyre runners falling down the order, but the difference is they're playing the long game. Maybe at the end of the race they will be in a better position in so many in the same way that so many times myself, Vettel, people who have chosen mediums in the first 3 races have ended up. So it's actually quite a difference that we've gone softs this time, but just felt like, new circuit, unsure what the best strategy is. Let's just go with what our engineers are telling us and what a lot of the majority of this grid are doing, which is putting on the Red Bull soft tyres. So we now try and have a go at Verstappen onto lap 4. DRS now activated at this point in the race. We try to go on the left-hand side. Verstappen was having none of it, but we'll go to the inside for turn 1. Be very easy as we enter that, because Verstappen still pulls it alongside us. We have to finish off the move in the second turn up into P4, making good progress, and now setting our sights on Leclerc and then the McLaren. All 3 of those drivers should be catchable today in today's race with the upgrades we've had into this one. So feeling pretty confident about how we can go in this one as Drogovic spins it in the final corners, and that is such a shame for the Repsol Haas, who did so well to qualify after upgrades for their team, but Drogovic has dropped it and elevates Vettel up into now what is P9 as we now go down the inside of Leclerc in the Mercedes. He's going to keep it side by side though through the remaining couple of corners in sector 1. We have a bit of a snap of oversteer, having to jockey with the steering wheel to keep it going in a straight line. We switch back from right to left. Leclerc's rear end stepping out, so maybe the tyre wear levels are already setting in on these soft tyres potentially, but we finally finish off a great pass on Leclerc, and now we'll set our sights on the McLaren guys. But that rear end is proving very difficult, and in the same place we finish the move on Leclerc, we lose it on the next lap after a bit of oversteer kicks in, and we just narrowly actually stop the car from spinning. So easy to do on this game with this year's handling model, so actually quite well that we kept it going in a straight line, and we'll re-pass Leclerc, this time a lot easier as we fly past him in a straight line on the left hand side before taking the racing line for turn 1, and we're back up into the top 3. But we've lost some time now to the McLarens, and we're going to choose to come in on lap 9 onto 10, bit early, about 3 laps earlier than maybe our engineer was telling us to come in for. But you can see on the bottom right, my softs, or I don't know about everyone else's, but my softs getting into a bit of a danger zone, the puncher region, when it goes to brick orange on the heads-up display. So I'm going to try and come in and get a massive undercut, and I'm really hoping if the McLaren stay true to the consensus of pitting around, lap 11 to 12, this could gain us a fair bit of time if we're able to get into a pocket of clean air, which I think we're just about going to come into. But then there are quite a few cars ahead which we definitely will catch if they don't come in sooner rather than later, and one of those includes our teammate Carlos Sainz. Absolutely baffling so far this season, the seasons he's had. He turned up in race 2 and did very well in round 2 of this season, but that was the only kind of positive so far in Season 4. He's really not been the driver I thought we were signing coming from Haas, having done so well in a few races for them, and obviously very much so for Ferrari beforehand, as we now send it to the inside of Russell. Another driver struggling this episode. Seems like these guys that got knocked down Q1, Perez is one of them ahead of us, all 3 of them being knocked out in Q1 and having that much traffic at the start of the race has really not helped them out. And a circuit like this, where it is difficult to pass sometimes if you don't have the kind of, delta time advantage over cars like I do, because of course we're so much quicker on the R&D chart than all these cars around us. It's difficult, and also obviously on a new fresh set of medium tyres. These guys on 11 laps old soft compound tyre, and if my tyre wear was anything to go by, they'll be really struggling for grip out there, and we are flying as we try and make the most. And now we're in clean air, so now we can maybe pop in even some purple sectors and really get a move on as we do overtake Lando Norris into lap 13. So the undercut has worked. We are ahead of one McLaren. Can we get the second one? Lap 14, Gasly emerging from the pits. He's taken a long old stint on the soft tyres and he comes out just ahead of Esteban Ocon in the Porsche Williams. And there we are through into turn 1. We can see Gasly ahead of us, but wasn't quite enough to undercut both McLarens. But I never expected to. But getting one of them is massive. And if we can just stay within 1 second of Gasly, that will open up the door for us to attack him, because that was the problem beforehand, as we now try and go around the outside of the Porsche Williams. Ocon putting up a fight. He doesn't have to let us through. This is for position, and we go through on the inside of the double right-hander into P6, and we're just on the teetering edge of being within Gasly's DRS zone. So we need to push a bit harder, get inside that DRS zone, and then try and reel him in. That was the problem in that first stint. You know, him and Lando were working together to pull away from us. We were obviously squabbling with Leclerc as well, which didn't help us. But now he's closed up to Schumacher, and he's now getting stuck a little bit behind the German driver, and we've used the double slipstream to pull them both into turn 1. Gasly makes the move. Schumacher locks up and invites us through. He waves us by, and we're now well inside that zone to maybe try and open up the rear flap in a later lap and overtake him. And crucially, Gasly has no other driver ahead of him, so he's not going to get DRS, and he's going to feel the pressure of ourselves coming up right in his mirrors. Lap 17 into turn 1, using DRS to reel him in and pull him in and apply that pressure, and it's going to work! Gasly locks up into the right-hander. He's still in P1, tries to defend, but he's now lost the rear end, and we swoop through on the left-hand side, up the hill, side by side now for what is P2 on the road, but will eventually be the race lead once Tsunoda pits. It's going to be close though. Well, that really awkward hairpin exit. It's a very, off-camber part of the circuit. We're still squabbling, going side by side now through the next double right-hander, down and up and down this roller coaster of a circuit at Portimao, and this is turned into an absolutely biblical battle with Pierre Gasly. He's still there on the outside. Bit of oversteer to try and get the rear end stepping out and allows us to defend into the last sector. But my oh my, that was an insane battle. We were side by side for pretty much the entirety of Sector 2. But if that battle was anything to go by, this fight is not over. 13 laps to go in this race. Gasly keeping the pressure up, and up the hill, he's going to have a kamikaze dive. He's come out of nowhere to get down the inside. He's come out of nowhere with a late lunge and caught me off guard, and he's back up into P1. So we have to go again on towards lap 23. 10 laps to go. It's just me and him. Lando Norris in third place, but he can't seem to keep up with this. He is within DRS though, but it's going to be myself versus Gasly for the third time now in this stint. Can we have enough speed to shoot down the inside? Just about. Bit of contact made, but narrowly making the overtake to get up into P1 once more. Gasly just about hanging on though behind us with a bit of a squirrel on the rear end over the curb, but he's had a great exit though up the hill. DRS available for the Frenchman. He's on the inside. We're going to give him a good old squeeze. Go back to the racing line. Yellow flags for what? Behind us. Oh, there's an engine failure. Lando Norris, his engine's gone up in smokes, and we've got a legal overtake on Gasly. We lift off the throttle to let him by, but annoyingly Leclerc has played us to an absolute T. He knew that we had to let off there, and he just stuck behind Gasly right up his gearbox. And so in letting Gasly by, it was impossible to get back in between them. And so all of a sudden, Leclerc is up into P2. And so now he's left to chase after this man in the lead in the McLaren, Gasly. But he's gone a bit wide and deep into turn 1. Leclerc right up his gearbox, and Gasly's going to lock up and go wide. And Leclerc, with his own oversteer issues, manages to wrestle that silver arrow through up into P1. An insane sequence of laps and corners for Leclerc. He's gone from P3 all of a sudden up into P1. For the first time in his Mercedes career, he leads an F1 Grand Prix. Gasly down to P2, and now we're back into 1 second of him in P3 though. Behind Albon, Verstappen, Tsunoda, the first man on the hard compounder tyre, having started on the mediums. Then comes Valtteri Bottas, Vettel with the 2 Audi works cars, Alonso P9, Perez rounds out the top 10, Schumacher, Liam Lawson, and then Carlos Sainz in P13, still struggling to make a mark. The car's the 3rd best car on the grid. There's nowhere to hide, unlike last season where this team and this car was pretty poor. This car's now pretty good, and we're showing it as we're now keeping up with Gasly. Maybe the win is still on today. Gasly slow behind Leclerc, and he's actually been tightened up into that corner that we've now gone down the inside, and we make him double guess his turning, and he's given us the room to work with, both of us with DRS open, down the crest into the hairpin, side by side. Gasly locks up though. Gasly locks up, but we've also had a shocking exit. The traction isn't there, and it is there for Gasly, who's committing to the inside of the double right-hander, and Pierre Gasly's taken us out. We spin 360. We've got no damage, I don't think, on the car, apart from the tyres, potentially, but Pierre Gasly has crashed with us, and now we're down to P5. What on earth was that? There was no room. There was no room to work with. He should have known when to have backed out. It was a spectacular crash down the hill into the double right-hander as the absolute smoke coming off the rear tyres, carbon fibre off the McLaren, and we did a nice 360 to match, but a horrendous incident there, and it leaves Gasly with no front wing and ourselves down to P5 with some rather hot rear tyres, and Gasly makes contact with Verstappen. I think that was some carbon fibre coming off the Renault, so he may have even maybe sentenced Verstappen to an extra pit stop as we now re-overtake Tsunoda, as him and the 2 Audi cars are knocking on the door at the rear for this position, this P3 that we're now back up to because of Gasly and Verstappen coming in. But lap 31, my tyres are going off a cliff, and Tsunoda has managed to get down the inside. Bottas now goes down the inside of not 1 but 2 cars as he tries to get the Japanese driver and tries to get himself onto the podium. Our old teammate, the reigning champion, Sebastian Vettel, now behind us with Alonso, thankfully about 6.8 seconds back. So this is the fight today, but we let Vettel through because my tyres are just going off, so I need to protect them. We've got 6.6 seconds, and we're very much in puncher territory, so we need to be very careful about locking up the tyres, getting on the curb. Bottas in P3, he's now struggling, and he's let Tsunoda through, and Sebastian Vettel as well. And now all of a sudden, I'm kind of forced to make an overtake because these guys are going so slow fighting each other, so we go round the outside of Bottas on these worn medium tyres, but I don't really want to be ahead of him because he's just going to overtake me again. He really is, because he's a much fresher hard compounder tyre. The mediums have really gone off a cliff, and so it just was a bit too much maybe going that much earlier onto this set of medium tyres. Gasly meanwhile re-overtaking some cars, getting up into P10 now for 1 points paying position, and if we're not careful, Alonso might catch us. 4.8 the gap is from Bottas to Fernando Alonso on those hard tyres. That's why I'm kind of, I'm quite keen on, I don't mind losing the position to Bottas as long as we can then keep P6, because I'm wary of these tyres going off so much. Meanwhile, in his own world, Leclerc is loving life in P1 in the Silver Arrow. Bottas down the inside. We fight him a little bit, but to be honest, I'm not too fussed. So if he just gets past me like that, yeah, I'm fine with him overtaking us, because that that left rear is at, over 70%. The front right, I think, is at like 60 to 70%. And Alonso now is 2.1 ahead of me. We've got some lapped cars now overtaking me because I just don't have the grip, and I'm taking it so cautiously to make sure that none of these tyres puncture on this last lap of the Grand Prix. Leclerc will win his first race for Mercedes. All of a sudden, it's a double podium for Red Bull Honda. Then it's 2x2 because it's the Audi Sport Works drivers in P4 and 5. Vettel ahead of Bottas, and we are just coasting through these corners to make sure we can limp home to the end. But Alonso's got other ideas. Here he comes into the last sector. Alonso dives down the inside. We're going to have to fight this out in the last couple of corners. Leclerc crosses the line for the win. Myself and Alonso are side by side though on the last sector. It's like Japan in real life. Vettel versus Alonso. It's myself versus Alonso. We're banging tyres and we're just about going to stay ahead for P6 at the Portuguese Grand Prix. My oh my, what an ending. What a battle with Fernando Alonso there. A little bit cheeky to dive down the inside. Did so well to give us the fight, but we just narrowly held on to those tyres and narrowly held on to P6.
Yet another historic win under their belts. Well done to the whole team at Mercedes. So, Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
I feel consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners.
Proving all the doubters wrong, Leclerc left Ferrari and has won with Mercedes here in Season 4. The win at the Portuguese Grand Prix. A surprising double Red Bull podium out of nowhere for the team highest top of the R&D chart, and they're going to be very happy because, of course, Gasly only scoring 1 point. Lando Norris, remember, with the engine failure, is going to be a massive swing in the Constructors' Championship early on in this season. But what a mad race there, and somehow, even with the spin and all that happened, we finished up in P6, but ahead of us, the two other Audi Sport Works drivers, and narrowly Fernando Alonso behind. But with that P6, we actually take the lead of the Drivers' Championship. Now, I don't think there was ever a point in Season 3, maybe one race at Baku, where we took the lead, but we haven't been used to leading the championship for so long, if at all, on this game, really, because remember, Season 2 and Season 1, we really hardly led ever in the championship, so this is a very different position to be in. Just through some consistency of this absolute bonkers race, we're able to lead the championship ahead of Albon and Lando Norris and Leclerc getting up there points-wise. But like I said, the Constructors, Red Bull now take a bit of a commanding lead ahead of Audi Sport in second place. McLaren in third now with that DNF for Lando and 1 point for Gasly. Myself, Sainz 0 points. P6, we remain in P4. Mercedes climb up above Renault and Ferrari. But yeah, we lead just 3 points ahead of Albon and Lando Norris. All rather close, but it's still so early on in the season, and we're still trying to form a pattern of who could be the protagonist of this one. But Leclerc does brilliantly to win a first race at Mercedes. Guys, if you have enjoyed that one, hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.